So first of all, just feeling the spine. So this column that ends in this triangular bone, the sacrum. So my structure transmits my weight down, splits at the sacrum, comes out down the legs. So very much a sense of something falling and splashing out and round. So what we want when we meditate, the enforced stillness of both body and mind, is putting pressure on the sacrum to sort of open up a little bit. The sacrum is 5 bones that are sort of fused together. And then you've got the coccyx underneath there, which is 3 or 4 or 5 bones. We want the whole structure to sort of become a little bit soft, but especially the tail, because you want a sense that the tail can sort of wriggle a little bit. It's like a little maggot at the end of your spine. And that tail, it can sort of direct the flow down. So I can choose to send it more into this hip and leg, or I can just push it a little bit with my mind and it will ooze down this leg. And then we want to feel the top of the spine. So you can think of there being like a sacrum at the top of the spine, a triangle pointing upwards like this. And out of either side of that sacrum come these 2 wings or plumes of energy that come around like this, in the same way that you've got, it's more obvious here because you've got the legs, but this is more like the ears. So that listening aspect that is so important, it's an extension of the spine. So the spine, something flows up the spine and comes out either side and reaches out, and then you can just bring it round into here, the same way that the legs, the feet, bring the energy in down here into the dantian. Let's first just try stretching the spine. We feel the power of this hand shape, this mudra. So my elbows are heavy. So my elbows are pulling down and swinging inwards like this. And that will tend to push the hands upwards. So gravity pulling at my elbows is squeezing my middle fingers upwards. If I really let my elbows go, then this would happen. There it would sort of become like a bowl. And so that's there within the posture. That beautiful story of St. Kevin praying on the shore of Glendalough in Ireland with his hands like this, and a blackbird nested in his hands. There's just like an image of something coming alive. So this is what, we have to be very aware that we're becoming still in meditation in order for something to wake up inside us. Okay, let's just bring the hands up and down a bit. Feeling the whole spine straightening and stretching. And then just bringing the arms out to the side. So you can either use the stick here or just the arms. So just a few twisting. Feel the sternum, the thymus trying to lift. So a heavy sacrum and a light sternum. The sacrum is like the keel of the boat, stops it capsizing. And then just a few tipping. Let's try pulling and the pushing of the stick. So what we need to do is get into the use of the mind. So if I'm going to pull the stick apart like this, then what do I do with my spirit to make that happen? I'm not just mechanically pulling like this. Something in me has to really expand and grow inside. That's what we're looking for. So the spirit is spirit's like the intention. It sets up the energy flowing, and then the body can slot into that. And then to get it going the other way, I just push the hands in, but something in my mind almost collapses in order to produce this inward pressure. And then something in me brightens and expands, and slowly the hands follow. And then I just reverse it. So it's just breathing, but really feeling the qualitative difference between the spirit that breathes in by expanding and then the spirit breathes out by dropping and deflating. But the image I think of is like a prowling tiger. You see it moving almost in slow motion. And every action is really deliberate but soft. So it's like its mind intends the movement of its leg, and then the leg flows along that channel that the mind has set up. So it's not thinking the movement, but it's all pure mind. Mind that's generated by spirit. And it's moving so gently and so slowly, so powerfully. And yet at the slightest provocation, it can leap into action, into immense speed and ferocity. the spine, ending in the sacrum. The sacrum distributes the downward flow of the spine into my two legs. And then the same with the upward. There's something growing up my spine, and then it comes out either side here. So these are just the wings, like the wings of the legs here, and the wings of the head. And then we want to feel the coccyx, so there's like this little wriggly worm at the end of my spine that almost has a life of its own. You're never quite sure what it's up to. And then the same sense here, that there's like something that comes out the top of the head, like a little probe or antenna. And then we have the sternum here. The upper sternum is the thymus that's just lifting upwards. So in order to get the sternum buoyant and lightly shining upwards, you need a heavy sacrum. So anxiety is really just the mind pulling you together in the wrong way. It's binding everything up into an effort to affect the future. So we have to sort of just let the sacrum just hang pendulously. And then this will release upwards. And it is very much a sense of something fluttering, like a butterfly that's fluttering upwards, or a hummingbird or something. So I have a heavy mind that's with my sacrum. I have a light mind that's here. The function of this is simply to praise God. It's singing God's praises all the time, if only you could hear it. But we need the heaviness at the bottom in order to swing the spine into the proper vertical so that this can lift naturally. If my heart is heavy, then this will tend to happen. And if my sacrum isn't heavy enough, then similarly, it will tend to drift out. So when I'm working with people, the main thing I'm trying to do all the time is to just get these two bones to relax, to get the sacrum to relax, in which case it will just gather gravity and become heavy, and get this to relax, get this to sort of just shed all its worry so that it can just naturally lift upwards. When it happens, the neck really lengthens. Okay, so let's do a little bit standing. Prowling. Sense that the movement is really coming from deep inside. It's easier to feel with the arm. deep in the heart, this movement is slowly extending across the shoulder blade, down the arm. So something is growing out of me. Feel like you've got these two wings behind you, like angel's wings or like an eagle's wing. And what do you need to do to get it to open out and reach? And then we're just like the same, exactly the same action in the legs from the sacrum. So that's what's moving my body, is my feet, obviously. So I've got this sense that there's like a big limb or wing growing out of my sacrum here. And then finally it hits the foot, and then the foot can pull me. What is it that makes it energy? It's my use of my mind. So I need to be able to imagine, and I need to be able to intend. So I have to see this energy coming out. Now that phrase of Lyong's, imagination becomes reality. That's energy. So my ability to see with my poetical mind's eye, and my ability to believe that and keep something flowing along it, that becomes energy. riding horse. So now just feel the sacrum. So the keel of the boat. So the keel of a sailing boat is filled with lead, just to give it enough heaviness to keep the mast upright. Otherwise, the slightest gust of wind will just blow the ship flat. So I just want to feel that, feel the ballast, the counterweight of the sacrum just pulling me down. And just feel if you get the angle right, if you really do just let it go, then it will swing forwards a little bit, just to the point where this naturally starts shining upwards. So we're sort of hovering at that point between tending to do this and tending to simply fall backwards. So the heaviness and stability in my sacrum allows this sway in my upper body. And it's difficult because the legs take a lot of strain. Feel the sacrum. So imagine it's this triangle of lead. Leaden. Yeah, so think of the qualities of lead. It's heavy, it's dull, it's grey, and it's malleable. It's got a sense of inertness, cold, heavy, dragging down. And now just imagine that that sacrum instead is made of gold. So gold is heavier than lead. But of course, it's got all these other qualities. It's beautiful, it's shiny, it's lustrous. And so how does it make you feel differently when you have a golden sacrum to when you have a leaden one? Those sort of nuances, that's just energy. That's just the tingle, the fizz of energy. This is what human beings are meant to be so good at. We have access to energy. We have an imagination. It tends not to get used very much anymore. I just want to make sure my legs, which have come up, are gripping my sacrum so lightly that the movement in the tail can open up. So I want this feeling that my tail can swing sort of side to side. It can swing forwards and back, and it can twist. It's like a corkscrew. And let's just breathe. With that same sense of prowling, the movement has to be really deliberate. You really have to have seen it and set it up before it happens. It's like feeding. Here I'm really opening my mouth wide, and then here I'm swallowing something in. And then the same thing, but just making more of this circuit. So here, as well as opening up, you're lifting. And then here, as you close down, you're drawing down yourself. It's the same action in the spine. let's just get the turning. So I turn because what becomes my back leg is straightening. But I want to feel that straightening as being a release of energy down the leg. So there's a pressure down in this direction, which is forcing this hip round. And then I come back by kicking in the hamstring. So I'm straightening my leg here. And then I start bending it. As I straighten my leg like this, there's a sense of my toes expanding. My toes are trying to separate, and particularly the little toe is sort of extending backwards like this. And you can get the little finger doing the same thing. Then what starts it coming back is this sense of ward off, this sense of expanding into a curve, rather than just bending into a curve like this. I'm expanding from my back into a curved shape. And I want the same feeling here. So I've straightened the leg, and that has made this happen. It's really pushed my sternum upwards. And then I just want to hook in with my little toe and curl up. But a sense that as I'm curling, the leg is still growing, it's still expanding. It's just no longer straight. So here there's a bending here that draws me round. And then once this has claimed more than half of the weight, this can start getting involved in its straightening to push me round and extend the little toe out. And then the little toe starts curling up. So a sense of the straightening being this flow down from my spine and sacrum, down the leg, but then a feeling that the bending is actually starting in the little toe. It's the little toe curling and gripping the ground, which starts the curling up. So the leg has to be empty before the little toe can operate. So this surge of energy here is just like an emptying, really, that's driving me round this way. Now the foot has got a lot of potential activity in it because it's not on the ground quite so strongly. And then this little finger can just catch in. So this is a bit like the pounce from prowling. So here, this is like the prowl. Everything is coming out of the spine of the tiger. And the last thing to move is the foot. And yet when it needs to release its energy and leap into action, its mind it's already in its fangs and its claws before they've even touched its prey. So here, something is reaching out, and then instantly I'm in the foot, I've caught it. So here there's a sense of really extending outwards, but from a central place. And then here, you catch the thing you've extended towards. So your mind leaps from you to the object that you're grasping. Feel the importance of turning away from the place that's going to become active. We're just trying to cultivate a real primed readiness. So really, really listening. And listening suspiciously, so you're never sure when you're going to have to leap into action. Trying to breathe the ground upwards by bending my legs. Let's just try contracting and releasing the belly first. I pull my belly in, I let my tail roll under, and then I let it expand out. So here I'm contracting, and then here I'm releasing and expanding. So what I want to feel is like my belly extending down my legs. So there's a sense that the belly connects through the Ming Men and down the glutes, down the hamstrings, down the calves, and under the feet into the ground. So when I'm pulling my belly in to do this, I'm also contracting that line from my Min Meng down the legs and onto the ground. So that it's like a stretchy elastic, or just like a long muscle, really, a continuous muscle. So when I do this, I'm contracting here, but I'm also contracting that line. everything's shortening, and that's taking me down to the ground. And then when I release my belly, the sense that that line has released. Obviously, these muscles are contracting, but I'm not that interested in that. I'm just interested more in getting this line from my Ming Men down the legs, pumping like this piece of elastic that's stretching and contracting, stretching and contracting. So here the whole line contracts. And then here I can just feel that line expanding, it's growing. And then it contracts again. And then expands. So it's just pure rubbery, elastic muscle. So when it contracts, it takes me down, but I want to feel that as something being sucked up. I'm being taken down to the ground. Something of the ground is being sucked up into my dantian. And then I can release that, let it back down. Or you can bring it up. So we can bring it up into the heart, for example, and then just let it release out down the arms. Feeling the sacrum again, heavy, your golden sacrum. And just allowing it just to drift down and forwards very, very slightly. So that this has a sense of freely lifting. This is difficult because it's very much associated with ego. So when a person is full of themselves and they're happy, really, they're sort of boisterous and got lots of energy, then they project from here all the time, but it's sort of false because it's not coming from heaviness here. What we want to make sure is it's the heaviness here going down through my legs and into the ground that allows something very delicate and ethereal to lift from the sternum. So when I think to myself, I can only think to myself when I drag my heart down and drag my sacrum up. When those 2 points try to meet in order to give me a sense of complete togetherness, and then I can start thinking. So we're just trying to just let those two separate all the time. And they will if you just stop clinging on to them. Let's just try walking. It's a minimal walking. Again, with this sense of prowling in slow motion. So you're yielding, you're throwing out a lasso, catching something and bringing it in. This is the sense. This is what happens when you walk. You throw your foot out to claim a new piece of ground, and then you pull yourself towards it. This is the basic action of the human being, to reach out and bring things in. So yielding. This is why yielding is so fundamental. Feel this lift of the heel, lifting the thymus. Somehow the lasso is thrown from here. My hand is just directing it, but it's all coming from this sense of me having already set it up in my mind. My imagination has already seen this action before it even starts. So this is my front foot with the heel lifting. This is the one that would be stepping out if I was walking. And the other one is the one that is rooted, the heel feeling as though it's going into the ground. I just want both minds, the mind, the butterfly mind that's flitting out, and the heavy, rooted, dark mind that's allowing the release of the butterfly. Without the heaviness, there can be no lightness. The two energies are so different and so separable. It almost feels like you have two bodies. You have one that's just your heavy mechanical body that's with this here, and then you've got this other ethereal body, that like a little fairy that's sort of leaping out. And then it just becomes the figure of 8 exercise. The top of the figure of 8 is your sternum. The bottom of the figure of 8 is your sacrum. You just become the child with the vivid imagination. This is what we want to make sure every time we work, we remember what it's like to be light. For a moment, we shed our heavy concerns so that something incredibly light can just dance out of us. Dance first, think later. So just trying to break the habit of pulling these two places towards each other is just so difficult. But that is basically selfishness. It's a refusal to let your sacrum release down in order to let your sternum release upwards. So when you separate them, when you let them release away from each other, you just become a different creature. An animal sensitivity. You bristle with aliveness. It's the opposite of engaging in conversation, really. So that we know that's what John would call dodgem cars, like in the fairgrounds. So one ego banging against another. There's that beautiful Beckett quote, I wanted to groan, help, help. And what came out was polite conversation. So we're just trying to get deep. For me, that's the key word, really. Deep, and we get there by listening. And it's like a dirty word nowadays. Everything is superficial, everything's short-lived, short-term, and dancing around surface. I mean, it can be a very attractive sheen, the surface, but we want the depths. So that Rupert Spira, you know, we tend to think of the heart as being this thing that's full of love and feeling. And he just said, no, the real heart is dark and terrifying. That's where you meet God, you know, in the deep, deep heart. And it's not a pleasant experience. It's just nothing. It's just absolute nothingness. But we just need to be brave enough to take more pain, take more darkness, take more solitude. So I want to become so still, so quiet that I wake up and everything else wakes up. And that awakeness is really just it is like this sort of fine energy that just rises out of you and fills the space that you're in. So you're very much two things. You're one, this body standing here in a grim sort of enduring way. But in another way, you're sort of dancing and flitting. And it's difficult because it's so much work to separate these two parts, to separate the dantian sternum, sacrum, from the heart, head, sternum. Okay, let's bring it up. So downstairs, there's the tinkle of children's voices. So that's the lightness, yeah. And it's sort of infectious. It sort of sparks response. It's such a magical shape, this. Part of it is wanting to just drop down, fill the dantian, and another part of it is my heavy elbows are wanting to do this and lift my heart upwards. And they're both there all the time. It's like, you know, in Christian prayer, it's your heartfelt sincerity that causes the knees to break, causes you to drop to your knees. So this release of the sacrum down is also what releases the heart upwards. And then it's just, prayer is just managing to keep that going as a process. So it doesn't end when your knees hit the cushion. You just keep it going.